What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel, and if you are new here, welcome to my channel and welcome to another True Crime Sunday. Now today we are going to be covering the Maura case. It has been requested ever since I did the Brianna Maitland case because people think that they are connected. Realistically, the only evidence that I've seen for this supposed connection is the distance from which they occurred. But even then, when considering the distance, it's like from Brisbane to the Gold Coast if you're Australian, which to me, it's not that far, but it is still a pretty long distance and I don't particularly see it. But at the end of this entire video, and obviously go and watch the Brianna Maitland case if you haven't seen it or if you're unaware of it, I want you guys to make up your own opinion. Obviously, like anything in life ever, don't take my word for it. You make your own opinion on it. So Maura was born on May 4th, 1982 in Massachusetts. Maura is 5'7" and she is a Caucasian female. She has dark hair and was born to Fred and Laurie Murray. Now, in this case, you'll hear a lot about Fred. Although Fred and Laurie got divorced when Maura was 6 years old, this was because Laurie cheated. She had an extramarital affair and also mothered a child from this affair. And so they got divorced, but even though this happened, Fred still took an extremely involved fatherly role after the parents split. So he was heavily involved in Maura's childhood. Not only was he picking her up for, you know, all of her after school or just school activities, he was also one of the basketball coaches on her basketball team. And Fred and Maura remained tight until she went missing. Now, the Maura case is probably one of the biggest cases in the true crime community, particularly because it is one of, well, it's been said to have been one of the first cases that I guess happened when the social media age of like online sleuths and true crime YouTubers and things like that happened. True crime YouTubers and online sleuths were just getting started, or I guess were just beginning, because I think one of the pages said that Facebook was like 5 days old when she went missing. So Maura disappeared, I guess, in social media's infancy. But now that social media is like this huge humongous thing, and we all know what happens when people all over the world get a hold of an interesting case. Usually people can connect the dots on their own, and law enforcement can use social media and things like YouTube and Facebook and all that kind of stuff to further the investigation. But the Maura case happened in social media's infancy. And because it's one of the biggest cases ever, I've known about this case ever since I started getting into like true crime stuff. But to this day, like from the moment I heard about this case till right this second, even after I've done my own research on it and not watched someone else's video, I still cannot decide between two theories. I go between them, and this one really is bewildering. So when Maura went missing, she was 21 years old and she was a nursing student. So she was in university in a pretty difficult, I study things like, I mean, psychology is hard, but I major in literature. And to me, when I compare that to a nursing degree, I'm like, girl, I'm so glad that I took no interest in nursing because that stuff seems hard. But she was also on the dean's list. And something that we should get out of the way really quickly, because if you watch any mainstream media or mainstream shows on the Maura case, they're going to leave out a lot of this stuff that I'm going to talk about, because it does make Maura look, I guess, it shines her in a not great light. It doesn't mean that Maura was a bad person. It just means that she was doing things that, they're bad, but if you look at it on the outside, you can see that it is an individual who is screaming out for help, or at least a different kind of help, because she did have a great support system, as in she had like a big family who cared about her. But in my opinion, her support system were playing a very passive role, and she wasn't really facing the consequences that I would have her face. You know what I'm saying? You'll see. She was facing consequences for these things, but they were very, I hate to bring race into this, but it's kind of like if anybody else did it, they would be facing a very different consequence, and these things wouldn't really be swept under the rug, if you know what I'm saying. The thing that her family and friends constantly push is that Maura did no wrong, did not lie, and she was an A grade student. She was an A grade student. She was very much a high achiever, but this also, to me, is evidence that she was struggling, and there was probably a little bit too much pressure put on Maura to be this A grade student, to be on the dean's list. Some of that pressure might have come from herself as well, but you know, it's kind of like a bad concoction for somebody's, just the way that they deal with certain things, to have their mistakes and their bad behavior kind of ignored by just sweeping it under the rug and giving them very basic consequences that aren't really consequences, really. So there is a pattern of stealing with Maura, and there are also people say that Maura was bulimic. To me, there is a pretty clear timeline, or at least a pretty clear pattern in the Maura Murray case that shows that this girl was actually asking for someone to pay a different kind of attention to her. She was needing support that she wasn't getting. She was getting support, but it was very passive support. No one was really paying attention to her outcries. Let's start with her getting into West Point. So she got into West Point Academy, which is like a top of the range. Her sister went there. Like, before that, she was in track, she was an A grade student, all this kind of stuff, but she got into West Point Academy. But she got caught stealing from another girl there, and she was asked to leave, or more so like, we will let you leave on your own accord and we won't make this a big deal, and we won't press charges if you leave on your own accord. But realistically, that's them asking her to leave. So there's the first thing. Later on, when she would be in university, people say that she stole someone's credit card and used it. Realistically, what she did was find a receipt that had a credit card number on it. I know it's the same thing, it's semantics, but she used that credit card number to rack up charges at a local Domino's. She used it as in she called on the phone and gave them that person's credit card details over the phone to make a huge order, like an insane amount of food. Some people say that she might have bought this food because she had friends with her, but there was also rumors of her being bulimic, and some people have said that her family weren't very, they kind of ignored the bulimia kind of thing. And then there are some comments where people say that her family made offhand comments that would be considered a little bit insensitive. Like, why are you eating all of that when you're just going to vomit it? Like, they don't really understand. Those rumors, though, I haven't seen a source from them, so I'm not quite sure who reported on that. What I do know, though, is that I myself have done very similar things, not stealing someone's credit card, but I've done similar things where I've ordered an abundance of food from Domino's, and I do that on the regular, and that is because I am bulimic. So I understand, it might not make a lot of sense to other people, and that's why a lot of people might be like, no, she must have had someone with her to order that much food. But I can say firsthand that that is not anything out of the ordinary for somebody who is struggling with their eating disorder, which, by the way, usually comes about because of not having a sense of control in your own life, and having some emotional problems in your life. It doesn't really have a lot to do with the food itself. It's more so the control you feel when you are binging and then purging. So it's not anything out of the ordinary. I do believe that the Domino's order happened because she was that way inclined. She was showing some patterns of drink driving. Alcoholism does run, I don't know would you say that alcoholism runs in someone's family if you're not sure if the parents do it, but you are sure that their siblings are struggling with alcoholism? Because her sister actually was in rehab for alcoholism, and that was like a big issue. But I know that Maura had her own issues with drink driving. This is another thing where I'm gonna say, like, she wasn't being held accountable, and she wasn't facing consequences in terms of her. We'll talk about that later on in the video. At the time, Maura had a long-distance, long-term boyfriend, Billy, and he was like, there was talks of them getting married. But another thing that has been made very clear in this case is that Maura felt very close to Billy's mum. It was like she was her second mum. She would spend their vacation summers, like all her time off, with Billy's family. And also at the time, she was working 2 jobs. As I said, her dad was extremely close with Maura. The father-daughter relationship that they had was like this. And the weekend before Maura went missing, he was visiting, and he visited every month. So it wasn't any kind of like special occasion or anything was different. It was described as a very normal weekend. The only thing that they were doing that was a little bit different was that he was supposed to be coming up to help her buy a car. Maura's car at the time was real beat up. It was run down. It was unreliable. That much to the point where her family purchased AAA long distance insurance for her car because it was so unreliable. And that's why they were planning on buying a new car in the first place. So when Fred arrived, they went and had dinner. It was completely normal. And then this is where he has come under a lot of fire. And I am going to say that this is not something that I personally think is a great thing. But again, it's a very passive relationship. And in psychology, we learned that there are a couple of different types of parenting, and some are good, some are bad. This type of parenting is very passive, where you're trying to be your daughter or sons or however they identify as friend, and you are looking over a lot of things that need consequences or need extra support or need you to not be their friend. So that's actually, in psychology, we learned that that is not a very good type of parenting. It's not neglect. It's not a neglectful parent. It's not an indifferent parent. And it's also not an overbearing and strict parent. But it isn't a very successful form of parenting, because this type of parenting overlooks the child's needs. You are not supposed to be their friend. You are supposed to be their parent who guides them through life and helps them learn from their mistakes. So that's just what I learned last semester in my psychology degree. But yeah, that is the type of parenting that I'm seeing from Fred, because what he does is he takes Maura to a liquor store and allows Maura to buy liquor, and then hands over the keys to his brand new car so that she can go to a dorm party. So this is him knowingly allowing his daughter access to alcohol in the same transaction as giving her the keys to his brand new car, knowing that she is going to a party to drink that alcohol. And yeah, I'm sure you can pick up on where I'm going there. So Maura goes to this party, and this is a very strange thing. I'm pretty sure that, like, I don't know that anything sinister happened at this party, and realistically I don't even know if this party comes into play at all in her disappearance, but I will give a little side mention. If you want to know a little bit more about it, maybe you can dive into the theories on your own, do a little bit of a Google. But a lot of people flag the fact that people from the party don't really remember Maura being with anyone or leaving with anyone, or if she was flirting with anyone at the party. But it's like, that's not really a big deal. Like, everyone's like, oh, people from the party are being like tight-lipped about this party, like not saying whether or not she was flirting with anyone. But it's also like, if I'm at a party, I'm not going to be, you know, keeping tabs on someone that I didn't come to the party with. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't come into this disappearance at all, but, you know, people pick up on theories and they run with it. So I'm gonna leave that with you. What we do know is Maura did drink the liquor that she got when she went to the liquor store with her dad, and she did drink drive, and she did crash his new car, and she racked up $10,000 worth of damage on her dad's brand new car. Here's another thing. The arresting officer, in the notes, like, there is evidence that she was drink driving, but the arresting officer didn't give her any sort of consequence. She did not get a DUI. She ends up going to her father's hotel room, doesn't wake him up, just waits until he wakes up. So Fred wakes up to his daughter in the hotel room and he's like, what's happened? And she tells him she feels quite bad. And the way that Fred describes this is that he's saying, like, I felt like my daughter felt like she had let her daddy down and I didn't want her to feel that way. And he was like, if this is the most trouble that I get from my daughter in her 21 years of living, then I am a lucky dad. So he doesn't reprimand her. He doesn't give her any consequences, which, I mean, like, she should have gotten consequences, but maybe he didn't give her consequences because he knew that he kind of enabled this behavior. He makes it a big point to say that he was like, Maura, it's fine. Insurance will cover it. Don't even worry about it. We'll get a new car. You just need to fill out the insurance form. You need to pick them up. You need to fill them out. And then once you're done, call me tomorrow and we will sort it out. This would be the last time that Fred would ever see or talk to his daughter. And this is where the confusing behavior kind of comes in for Maura. So later that day, she would be looking up directions. So she was looking up different routes and directions on maps, on Google Maps, and she was printing them out to New Hampshire. Is that how you say it? New Hampshire or New Hampshire? I think it depends on your accent. I'm going to say New Hampshire. Anyways, she was doing this until 4 a.m. Like from that night until 4 in the morning. She was looking in Burlington, her and her father liked hiking in that area. She had never mentioned going on a trip. She never planned going on a trip with anyone. And everyone says that it's weird that she was planning this trip, especially because classes like had only just started. And then aside from the you know, looking up routes and stuff on Google Maps, she was also making phone calls to inquire about bookings for condos in that area. So she definitely was planning on going there, just nobody knows why. And then this is also another thing that's like, I don't really know what the relationship between her and Billy is, like were they all good at the time, because there's some conflicting information. Her friends, her family, and her boyfriend Billy all pushed the fact that no, their relationship was fine, they were planning on getting married, like they were like the perfect, picture perfect couple. However, the facts to me and the evidence to me suggests the contrary. The way that she left her dorm was she packed up all of her belongings, like literally took things off the wall, packed all of her stuff to the, like it was on her bed. She wasn't planning on coming back anytime soon because all of her stuff was on her bed. And there was a printed out email from way back when Billy had cheated on her. She'd printed out that old email and placed it on top of the boxes which were on top of her bed. And another thing that makes me think that she maybe wasn't on good terms with Billy was that that day she had sent Billy a text message that said something along the lines of, hey, I'm fine. I'm sorry that I haven't been getting back to you. To be honest, I haven't felt like talking, but I promise I'll get back to you soon. So to me, that doesn't sound like a picture perfect couple. But nevertheless, she was making reservations. She was attempting to make reservations. She didn't actually book anything for her trip before she left, but she was definitely trying to. So one of the lines that she was using wasn't actually active. It did tell you the available bookings, but it didn't let you actually make a reservation. And I do know that she successfully called somebody else to rent out their condo. Her family had actually stayed in that particular condo before, but the lady 3 months later, like after all of this stuff happened, said that she has no recollection of that phone call because it had been so long, but she knows for a fact that she didn't end up renting out that condo for that weekend. Another thing that Maura did was she emailed her professor and her supervisor saying that there was a death in the family and she needed the next week off from her study and her work obligation. Everyone makes a huge deal out of her emailing this to her professors, especially because there was no death in the family. And this is where her family pushed the fact that Maura is not a liar. She would never lie, and they have no idea why she lied. But as I said in the start of the video, it seems like they're either actively trying to make Maura look a certain way, which I totally get because that's your loved one and you want people to find them and you don't want people to think that, you know, they're reckless or anything. But your daughter and your loved one is quite obviously screaming out for help. Somebody who is totally fine, doesn't need any assistance, and is, you know, this picture perfect person, doesn't have a pattern of stealing, doesn't have a pattern of drink driving and crashing, doesn't have a pattern of lying, doesn't do things without telling people where they're going. To me, it looks like Maura is pretty much screaming out to the people in her life, hey, I'm struggling, that's why I'm doing all of these things. But still to this day, it seems like her like cries for help within her behavior is kind of being ignored. And I think just from what I'm gathering from her behavior thus far is that it's gotten bad. Whatever it is she's feeling, it's gotten bad. It's gotten to the point where she is insanely overwhelmed, to the point where she would lie about someone dying in her family. If she lied about something like that, it sounds like she needed to get away from her life. I'm not saying to get away from her life as into like, I'm talking about get away from her life to just get away from it. Some people's coping strategies are to physically run away from things. We know that she loved hiking, she loved the outdoors. I myself don't cope that way. I myself do isolate said self in-house. But Maura seems like the kind of person who needed to actually physically remove herself from the situation to just have a little mini vacation, maybe. I don't know. But to me, that's what this is screaming. Like, things got that bad that she needed to remove herself from the situation. That's not behavior that comes from a picture perfect, healthy-minded young woman. What's up, you guys? So I am just editing the Maura Murray case video that you are watching obviously right now. I'm making an executive decision to split this into 2 separate videos, otherwise it is going to be the longest video and the longest upload ever, because I'm looking at it and the timestamp is like, whoa. So click up there for part 2, and thank you for watching, and subscribe if you like my vibe. Give the video a thumbs up because it really does help.